All right. Hello, everybody. This is Ray Stanley from Jennifer Schaus and Associates. Welcome to the 2018 edition of Webinar Wednesdays, brought to you live from Washington, D.C. and hosted by Jennifer Schaus and Associates. Our topics cover all things related to the U.S. government contracting. Thanks for joining us today. Our panelists are industry experts, including consultants, attorneys, accountants, and other professionals who work in the federal contracting sector. Our webinars are complimentary and are held every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. They are all recorded and can be viewed on our YouTube channel or directly on our website under the Webinar tab. In the interest of time, we do not take questions, so please send your questions directly to the speaker. Her information is available upon the last slide. All right, so a little bit about us. We are a Washington, D.C.-based consulting firm serving both product and service companies worldwide. Our services range from market analysis reports to contract vehicles and contract administration. We can help you with GSA schedules, proposal writing, 8A certification, and more. We host events throughout the year, including training classes, so please visit our website or sign up for our complimentary newsletter to stay current. So today, we're fortunate enough to be joined by our own Jennifer Schaus. Jennifer will be discussing securing a GSA schedule for service companies. You can see some of Jennifer's background on the screen provided. So thanks for joining us today, Jennifer. Let's dig into securing a GSA schedule for service companies.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks to all the attendees for joining us today as we kick off the 2018 series. As the screen shows, we are going to be discussing securing a GSA schedule for service companies. So we can dig into the next slide. And this slide covers our agenda. So we're going to go through 5 different components today. The first is, what is a GSA schedule? We'll talk about some simple and basic facts that you may or may not know. We'll then talk about the requirements to get onto the GSA schedule. Should you meet those requirements, we'll then talk about the actual proposal. Within that proposal, there is a pricing section that sometimes is the most difficult piece to get through. And the last component today, we will discuss some of the resources that are available publicly to companies related to GSA schedules. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is a GSA schedule? It's a contract vehicle only, and this means that it is one way that the government can purchase from you. 99% of the GSA schedule is based on your pricing, more specifically your lowest pricing or your most favored customer, sometimes referred to as MFC, again, most favored customer pricing. The schedule, again, is not required. It is only a marketing tool. It's only used about 10% of the time in federal purchases. Again, not required, and it is a marketing tool. There are other contract vehicles that are out there. Some include agency vehicles such as Navy Seaport E, NASA SOUP, OPM has their own contract vehicle, DHS has something called Eagle. So again, GSA is a contract vehicle, and it's one of many. It can actually be used across all the agencies, and in some cases, state and local governments can use the schedule. Quasi-government agencies, including the UN, the World Bank, the IFC, the IMF, the Red Cross, can also purchase from the GSA schedule. The important thing here is just to know that it's not required, and it's important to know who your customer is and what contract vehicles they prefer. Next slide, please. The GSA schedule, it is a contract, so it does have terms and conditions that you must abide by. I highly suggest downloading the RFP on the GSA site or on the FedDesOps sites to understand exactly what it is you're signing up for. About 20,000 companies, more or less, hold GSA schedules. And as the slide shows, 63% have 0 sales next to their name. And that means 0 sales specifically through their schedule. They may have a $5 million contract with the U.S. Air Force or the Army, but through their schedule, they have 0 sales. Why is that important? Simply because GSA has a $25,000 per year sales quota through your schedule. So again, you may have a $5 million contract with the Army or Air Force or Department of Commerce or whatever federal agency, but if they are not purchasing through your schedule, it does not count for your $25,000 GSA sales quota. If you don't meet the GSA sales quota, GSA will cancel your schedule. So before you spend your own time and money and effort, or before you pay a company like us or a consultant out there a couple $1,000s to help you with the schedule, you want to make sure that you are going to have sales through the schedule. Otherwise, the schedule then becomes a liability to you and is not something that's helpful. GSA also, you need to think of them as a for-profit entity. They're a non-appropriated agency, meaning that they do not receive taxpayer funding. Well, how do they get their funding? They charge their schedule holders. So these 20,000 vendors are paying GSA 0.75% each month or each quarter of their GSA schedule sales. They call this the industrial funding fee, or the IFF. Again, 0.75%, so it's less than 1%, but you are still required to pay GSA this fee, and this will go into your compliance. If you have $5 million worth of sales, but it's not through your schedule, what do you owe GSA? Nothing. If the $5 million is going through your schedule, then of course you will pay them 0.75% of that $5 million. Again, that quarterly fee, industrial funding fee, paid only on your GSA schedule sales. And let's move to the next slide, please. So the point here, again, the GSA schedule is not for everybody. Make sure that your customers specifically purchase through the schedule. If you have the build it and they will come mentality, you may be walking away, again, with a liability here. And there's a lot of repercussions simply because the GSA is primarily based on price. So let's move to the next slide, please. And we'll talk about the requirements. So some of the requirements to get onto the schedule are going to include past performance, meaning that your business needs to have been alive and with a heartbeat for at least 2 full years. You'll need 2 full years of balance sheet and income statement showing revenues. Full-time employees, you should have business experience providing these services that you're proposing to sell through the schedule. You'll need at least 6, I'd say, quote-unquote, happy customers to fill out an open rating survey. You'll need at least 2 or potentially 3 if you're providing IT services, contracts within the last 2 years that are related to the schedule that you're pursuing. So if you're providing project management services, you'll need 2 projects within the last 2 years that you can demonstrate that you have done this type of work. These projects can be with commercial companies, nonprofits. You could have been a sub to Northrop Grumman or ABC company, or you could have actually had direct work with the government. But government contracting experience is not required. Simply experience is required. For your labor categories, the services that you're proposing, you'll need job descriptions for each of those labor categories, along with the hourly rates that those labor categories are billed at. Additionally, you'll need the minimum number of education, minimum years of experience, and again, it includes, that should match up to the description and the labor category. To show that you've billed this work, you'll need copies of invoices, would be preferable. If you actually don't have invoices, quotation sheets are acceptable. It's not our preference with, when we work with clients, we prefer companies that have been out there for a while, have generated revenue, and do have those invoices. So you want to show that the work has been billed. And let's move to the next slide, please. So we'll talk about the proposal. The GSA schedule is an RFP, a request for proposal. RFPs are typically found on FedBizOpps, so that is the fbo.gov website. And GSA, just like any other agency, will sometimes make changes to the solicitation or the RFP. So you want to make sure that when you download the RFP, that if you, by the time you get to submitting your proposal, it could be a couple months later, GSA may have made some changes to that solicitation. That could include a new test that you need to take or additional forms that you need to submit. So make sure that you are providing a response to that current solicitation. You also want to make sure that you're compliant, meaning that you've met all of the requirements in a solicitation and that your pricing is competitive. And let's move to the next slide, please. So the proposal typically has three main sections: the administrative, the technical, the pricing, and then there's other documents that are required as part of the proposal that are also deemed very necessary and important. The administrative section is going to be covering your financial statements, readiness assessment, pathway to success, a lot of these kind of tests that GSA wants you to take. Your technical section will get into the past performance, which is going to be that open rating survey that goes to 6 of your customers. The project experiences, this is the copies of the contracts that you've worked on that are similar to the services that you're trying to provide, as well as the narrative that goes with those. And then you're going to have the pricing section, which we'll talk about in more detail in a moment. And then other documents, which would include copies of your digital certificates and other forms. And let's move to the next section, or the next slide, please. So the pricing. So the pricing, this is really the most important component. 99% of the GSA schedule is focused on GSA securing your lowest rates. Again, this is kind of your, what we call your most favored customer rates. So you will need to open the kimono and share with GSA the discounts that you have given to customers, as well as the policies that you have in place. So which of your customers are getting discounts? Is this a category of customers, meaning anytime you deal with state and local government, you automatically give them a 5% discount, or every time you deal with nonprofits, you give them a 7% discount, or every time you deal with Northrop Grumman, just because they're a highly respected entity, you give them a 12% discount. GSA will also want to know the frequency. Are these discounts standard? Are they non-standard? Is it simply a random discount that you gave just to win the business? And what exactly are those discounts? Once you then share this information with GSA, they will want to receive something that is equal to or better than your most favored customer. Again, your most favored customer is going to be more or less your lowest price customer. And let's move to the next slide, please. So your pricing that you're offering to GSA should be fully burdened. This includes your fringe, overhead, G&A, and we've got plenty of webinars on pricing, which you can find on our website, talking about how to create rates. We're doing a webinar, I think, in another month or two about competitive pricing. So I would say take a look at those webinars if you want more details. But everything that you're showing GSA here for your pricing for each of your labor categories, these are fully loaded rates. And then you're going to have another column in this proposal spreadsheet that is going to include your offered pricing. This is what you are offering to GSA, which should be lower than those most favored customer discounts. GSA will conduct 2 litmus tests. One is going to be your internal, meaning are you actually offering GSA something that is equal to or lower than your most favored customer rates? And the second litmus test is GSA will look at the other companies on the schedule that are offering the same or similar labor categories. So if you have a project manager that has a bachelor's degree and requires a minimum of 4 years of experience, and that rate is $50 per hour, and you're offering GSA $60 per hour, it's probably not going to fly. So you want to make sure that you are competitive with others on the schedule, and I'd highly suggest doing this before you go down the path of trying to get onto the schedule. Do a little bit of market analysis to make sure that your rates are in sync with others on the schedule. Otherwise, GSA is going to say, hey, why should we let you onto the schedule at $60 an hour when we can actually get these rates from 500 other companies at $50 per hour. And let's move to the next slide, please. So once GSA accepts your rates, let's say that you decide to come down to $49 an hour for this project manager, and that becomes your GSA schedule rate. So now you've got a GSA schedule, your project manager GSA rate is $49 per hour. There's an RFP that requires GSA schedule rates. As you start bidding, your rates will actually be lower than your GSA rate. So your GSA rates are a price ceiling, as the slide indicates. So keep in mind, with these lower margins that you're going to have, you're going to need then higher volume to sustain and maintain your business. And let's move to the next slide, please. Just like I said, your lower rates, obviously you're going to need higher volume, so you're going to need a lot of federal customers or a really big order in order to really maintain a profitable and sustainable business. This is why doing that market research up front makes a lot of sense. So let's talk about the resources. Okay, so as I mentioned, you should really kind of do this market research up front to make sure that you are competitive with others on the schedule, and GSA will be conducting this competitive analysis as well. Where can you find this information? Right here on the calc.gsa.gov site. You'll plug in IT specialist, systems engineer, program manager, project manager. You'll plug in the minimum education, the minimum years of experience, and there's also a drop down to select the schedule that you're pursuing. And this will show you what the average rates are for those specific labor categories. If they come in pretty low, don't be surprised. But if that's the case, if they're a lot lower than what you're offering, then the GSA schedule may not be for you. Again, this is 99% based on GSA getting your lowest rates. And then once your rates are locked in, you're going to be bidding at lower than your GSA rates. So let's move to the next slide, please. So eoffer.gsa, that's where you're going to go to in order to submit your proposal to GSA. In order to kind of unlock this site, you'll need a digital certificate. There is a cost for for the digital certificate. There used to be 2 companies that were authorized to provide these. Now I think it's just 1. Give yourself about a week to 10 days to get that secured, because you'll need to get some information notarized. You'll pay a fee of about $200 or $300, depending if you want a 1 or 2 year digital certificate. And this, again, is where you're going to submit your proposal. You'll have some back and forth with GSA, and then once, or if your company is approved for the schedule, you'll actually electronically sign the contract here. And the next slide, please. eBuy. This is the very special, highly coveted section within GSA or portal where RFPs will be pushed out to your company should you have a GSA schedule. The only companies that can get into eBuy are GSA schedule holders. So let's say you're on the schedule and you're providing IT services, and somebody over at Commerce needs to purchase IT services. Potentially they say, hey, we think we're going to go through the GSA schedule to order these services. And so everybody within the IT professional services category would then get these this notification from Department of Commerce. And you can bid or not bid. You'll see RFPs, RFQs, RFIs. You can list up to 10 individuals within your company. I suggest having at least 2, if not 3 or 4. Sometimes people are on vacation. Sometimes they may miss an email. And I will tell you, you'll see a spike in these notifications typically in Q4 of the federal government. That's obviously July, August, and September, when the government has the use it or lose it with their budget, and they want to make quick purchases that with companies that have been vetted, that they know they're getting a good price for, where else to go but GSA schedule holders. So sometimes you may get one of these notifications once a week, once a day, but in that fourth quarter, they're coming out pretty quickly. And I believe this is all that I have for my presentation today. So thanks, Ray, for moderating.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great presentation. And thanks again for sharing your time and knowledge on this topic. Thanks especially to our attendees. If you have any questions, please contact Jennifer directly with the information you see up on your screen. Next week, we are covering bid protests, what's new, what's old, and why do we care. The full schedule of webinars can be found on our website under the webinar tab. Today's recording will be on our website later this week. Thank you, and this concludes the webinar.